What's up, YouTube? This is True Raw for TV. And Max Kellerman of ESPN First Take was on NBA Countdown. And he gave reasons why he thought the Golden State Warriors were not going to win the championship this year. And therefore not three-peat. And he gave, from my recollection, three reasons. Well, a couple other reasons too, but the first reason he gave was their defensive rating had been dropping from, I think, 2014-15, I think, was the year he started. They were number one in NBA defensive rating. And every year since then, for the most part, they've been going down. Last year, the first year they got Durant, they were second in the NBA defensive rating. Last year, they were 11th. And this year, they're 13th. So, they're going down, but it's not like they're like 27th or something. And some of that is attributed to, in my opinion, the fact that the bench isn't what it once was. And also, they don't have a guy like Andrew Bogut in the middle. So that's going to change with the arrival of Cousins on the floor. Also, he did mention their bench or lack thereof is one of the reasons why he didn't think they'd go in title. Then he mentioned Draymond Green. Draymond Green's player efficiency rating is horrible. His shooting has been horrid. His defense has been slipping, and he appears to be a player in decline. And he mentioned Klay Thompson. Although Klay Thompson is averaging, I think, like 22 points a game or something like that, which is about standard for him. His shooting, in particular his three-point shooting, has been substandard by his standards. He's shooting about 34% from beyond the arc this year. I think he's like a career 42 or 43% shooter. And last year he shot 44% from beyond the arc. Klay has always been a guy that shoots well over 40% from beyond the arc. So, those are basically his reasons. And I think that it's kind of stupid, in my opinion, to bring up numbers when we're not even halfway through the regular season. I've mentioned this time and time again, but the 1998 Chicago Bulls struggled earlier on that year. At one point in time, they were like a 500 team. And some of that had to do with, most of it had to do with Scottie Pippen missing the first half of the regular season. And without Scottie on the floor, all right, without Scottie, Michael had to assume more of the playmaking responsibility, and that's something that he had grown unaccustomed to doing since the emergence of Scottie Pippen. Really, he hadn't really done that since Phil Jackson had become the coach, and Michael played more off the ball. And really, I think the last year he kind of really had the ball in his hands a lot. Might have been the year that he played point guard. So that's like, you're talking like the late 80s. So Michael was not accustomed to that. He was 35 years old, 35 years old. And without Scottie, didn't have the spacing that you're accustomed to having. So Michael struggled with his shooting. At one point in time, Michael Jordan was shooting like 38% from the floor. Steve Kerr was struggling with his outside shot as well. At one point in time, I think during the season, Steve Kerr was only shooting like 31% from beyond the arc. This is a guy that 2 years prior, well, not 2 years prior, but the last two seasons, he had been shooting over 50% from three-point range. But when Scottie Pippen reemerged from the back injury, Michael Jordan took off. not having to have the total burden of, of being the playmaker, ball handler, scorer, always having to defend the best player on the team, on the opposing team, and then Michael kind of took off, and then with increased spacing, Steve Kerr got it going, and I think Kerr ended up shooting over 41% from three-point range that year, and Michael ended up shooting over 46% from the floor, which is substandard by his standards, but pretty good for this era. Then I think about the 2005-2006 Miami Heat. At this point in time, matter of fact, almost the exact same time period, if you go back to, I just looked this up, January the 6th, 2006, that Miami Heat team was 20-15 on the year. They were 20-15. And while they were a good team, I don't think most people saw them as a championship caliber team. Most people were still looking at the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons had won the championship in 2004, upsetting the Los Angeles Lakers. And then just the year before, in 2005 NBA Finals, the Pistons and the Spurs had a great 7-game battle, which went down to the wire with the Spurs winning the championship. If you were a basketball fan, you would enjoy that series. If you're a casual fan, you'd have been like, why isn't anybody scoring a lot of points? So, but after that, Miami went on a run during the regular season. They wound up winning 50 games. And, of course, in the finals, D-Wade took that team on his back after the Heat went down 2-0, almost on the verge of going down 3-0, and they won the series 4-2. And I still think, in my opinion, what D-Wade did in that finals is more impressive than what the so-called self-proclaimed GOAT did in 2016. That's just my opinion. If you watch that series, D-Wade, whether or not you felt that he deserved some of those free throws he got, D-Wade took that team on his back and propelled the Miami Heat to an NBA title, the first one of the franchise history. It was the first championship in that team's history. And I think that gets lost in history a little bit, because since then, the Heat won 2 more championships when LeBron joined them. But you got to remember, when Wade pretty much self-propelled that team to a championship, yeah, he had Shaq on his team, but Shaq was on the downside of his career. All right. That team had only been in existence, for 18 years. And for many of those years, the Heat were a horrible team. So for him to win a championship, it was awesome. Remember those Miami Heat teams with Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway and Dan Marley? Those teams came up short. So to Michael Jordan and then the New York Knicks. So that was a big accomplishment. And I think Dwayne Wade doesn't get enough praise anymore. I know he's not the player he once was, but that shows you what the media is about, man. They're whores. They're whores for ratings about who, garners the most interest, gets the most ratings and what have you. But the Warriors are fine. They're going to be better when they get Cousins back. And you got to look at it. They still have Kevin Durant, who I think is the best scorer in the game, even though Harden might lead the NBA in scoring. But when it comes to efficiency and shooting and what he can actually bring to the table, Kevin Durant is the best scorer in the NBA. All right. The guy's averaging 28 points per game on a team with 2 other guys that could put up big numbers. Remember Klay Thompson's the guy that scored 37 points in a quarter, which is an NBA record. Klay Thompson's the guy that scored 60 points in 29 minutes. So he can score. And on any other situation when he was on a bad team, he'd be amongst the leaders in scoring, if not leading the NBA in scoring, in my opinion, if he was in the right situation. Remember, Steph Curry led the NBA in scoring in 2016. So you can take that into effect, and Durant's still averaging 28 points a game. Guy that's led the NBA in scoring, I think, 4 different times. James Harden is a good scorer, but to call him the best offensive weapon, Chris Paul, get the fuck out of here. But the Warriors are fine. Will they win the championship? We'll see. But I still think they're favored, especially when they get DeMarcus Cousins.